Resuming my recording right now. And so, again, thank you for being here. We're going to go through some basic information first as a faculty, and then we'll open it up for questions. And please just interject as things come up. And again, Abby Soakland has graciously agreed to come in and provide a little bit of the day-to-day in terms of what it's like to be a student in our program. If we're ready, then I'm going to switch over to sharing my screen for a moment. And we'll go through this. Where's Google? How's that? Can everyone see that okay? Excellent. You have all shifted, so I'm looking at a different camera now. So as I said, there are a number of us that are here today, and so if we would just go in order and introduce ourselves, please.
Assuming I am first on the list, my name is Abby Soakland. I am in my 5th semester from counting right of the program. I graduated from Truman with my undergrad, and I am currently in a little outside of St. Louis. I work at Sullivan High School, and this is also where I have done my practicum and my current internship as well. And I'm on the school counseling track, I should say. But we have a pretty close cohort with our mental health, so I've talked to them as well about some of their experiences, and we've shared most of the same classes.
Thanks, Abby. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Ellen Caruth. I am first year faculty here at Truman, but have been a counselor educator for about 12 years now. And I have a background in clinical mental health counseling. And let's see, I live in Washington State on a little island just outside of Seattle called Vashon Island. So very far away from Truman, but very excited for the opportunity to be a part of this community. Let's see, I have in the last couple of semesters taught a number of the classes specific to clinical mental health counseling, the diagnosis class, the class in psychopharmacology, lifespan development, counseling theories, and then also a section of practicum. In my free time, I also am a part-time clinician. I work for a group practice called Resonant Relationships in Seattle, and they are an LGBTQ plus affirming practice. And so I work with a lot of clients that have marginalized identities, and find that work to be incredibly humbling and meaningful. And I'm glad to have the space in my schedule with the virtual nature of the program to be able to still continue to see clients while I also enjoy teaching classes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elsa Soto-Leggett. I am second year faculty in the counseling program. I'm a registered play therapist. Oops, sorry. I'm an LPC and an LPC supervisor, as well as a registered play therapist and certified school counselor. And so my area of specialty is children and adolescents, and enjoy working with the students both in the school counseling and mental health track. And like Dr. Caruth, on the side of my free time, I do some work in a small practice for supervision of supervising LPC associates. And I'm in Houston, Texas.
I'm Dr. Lynn Pierce. I am also a first year faculty in the program, and I'm a licensed professional counselor as well as a certified rehabilitation counselor, which is the disability specialty in our profession. So like the others, I do also see clients in addition to my teaching work. And I have a trauma background, so I do EMDR consulting, as well as some telehealth consulting with practice here in Atlanta, where I am based, Atlanta, Georgia. And I also do equine facilitated care for trauma, largely veterans, and then some children with disabilities. So that's what my free time looks like.
And I'm Dr. Carl Witt. I'm the chair of the program and a third-year faculty member. As you might gather, we've been in business for 5 semesters. I think Abby counted correctly, since the fall of 2021. I'm a licensed professional counselor and licensed professional counselor supervisor in the state of Texas, which means that not only am I credentialed for private practice, but I also have the training and expertise to help people in their post-master's licensure phase when they're trying to become independent practitioners themselves. In addition to that, I'm a nationally board certified counselor for the United States and its territories, and I'm also a certified school counselor in the state of Texas. School counseling is my primary area of expertise. That's where most of my work has been done, a little bit of dabbling at the university level. Thank you again for coming together. And if you would, take a minute to introduce yourselves as well, since we've got a couple of you here.
My name is Monique Tatum. I recently graduated from ASU in December with actually a criminal justice degree, and quickly realized that that wasn't kind of the way that I wanted to go, and that I wanted to be more helpful, if you can be, in doing counseling. My background from a young standpoint was always in the funeral home. I was a funeral director, and I miss that and being able to have that helpful feeling with people. So I decided to try counseling. And so I'm just kind of dabbling to see what this program looks like, what all it will entail for me, and then hopefully I'll be able to make a decision on grad school.
Excellent, excellent. Well, welcome.
Hi, I can go next. I'm Mallory. I'm a junior at Truman State, pursuing an undergrad in psychology and a minor in child studies. And I'm just wanting to learn more about the both of the master's options at Truman.
Sounds good. Well, welcome. I think at this point, I turn it over to Dr. Pierce for a little bit. And so I will mute myself.
Great. So I've been asked to just give you a little bit of the really high level, very basic information about the program, what it looks like, specialties. So starting with what is counseling, because of course there are a number of different helping professions all related to mental health. So this definition is what the American Counseling Association has defined in 2014 in terms of a definition of counseling. Counseling is a professional relationship that empowers diverse individuals, families, and groups to accomplish mental health, wellness, education, and career goals. So it's a lot of active listening. And when we're talking about counseling, you'll hear a lot of words like wellness, holistic approach. And those are some of the things that set it maybe a little bit apart from some of the other related professions. And next slide shows our degree options, which Mallory, I believe you mentioned. So we do have 2 different options. There's a Master of Arts in Counseling with a focus on mental health counseling. And then there's also the Master of Arts in Counseling with a focus on school counseling. And as our first cohort coming in is starting to get into their internships and toward the end of the program, we also have a number of students across the cohorts who are interested in pursuing both. And that definitely can happen. We just kind of have you focus on one primarily so that we can get you through that, because it takes a little bit of extra time to do the additional practice components, which others will talk about in later slides. So, oh, you're muted, Dr. Witt.
There we go. One thing that I wanted to be sure to mention, because I think we can officially talk about this now, is yesterday the state of Missouri approved us for a Master of Arts in Counseling with Rehabilitation Counseling. There's still a few steps that we have to go through at the national level in terms of our accrediting bodies before it's set in stone. But we are very excited about that. And I actually, with Ms. Townsend, just had a meeting shortly a few moments ago about how we're going to market that and talk about that. So we're excited to add that to our offerings in the upcoming months.
And I mentioned that's my background and kind of primary specialty area I would consider has to do with serving populations with disabilities in various settings. So that's going to be a really great addition to the two specialties we already offer. And the next slide shows basics of the program. So this is a 60-hour program. And we offer two different options. So because many of our students have jobs, family, life. So there's the option to do the program full-time, where you would be taking 9 hours. So that's 3 classes per semester, or part-time, which would be 6 hours, 2 classes per semester. Our classes do run on a semester format, not quarters or anything like that. And we have classes fall, spring, and summer. Summer gets to be a little bit hectic and long, but a few of our classes are at least currently only offered in summer. So you could expect to also be having classes during that summer term. And then the note on the side is just that students who are in that school specialty, depending on your state and requirements, may need to take some additional courses that can be done alongside the rest of your coursework, or it can be done before you start. Dr. Witt, I'm not sure if that's covered more in other slides, but if you or Dr. Leggett would like to add something about that, you're welcome to.
I think that says it all. Missouri does require a couple of additional classes for folks who are not certified teachers. If you're a certified teacher, then there may be one class, depending on what you took in your certification program, Psychology of Exceptional Children. But otherwise, you should be okay if you're fully certified. And for folks who are not yet certified, there are a couple of leveling classes that have to be taken before graduation in order to get certified.
And so that leads to class formats. And I'll share a little bit of information with that. That's on the next slide. Hey, Dr. Witt, oh, there you go, thank you. So the program is totally online. And so the class formats are asynchronous, synchronous, and semi-synchronous. So the synchronous classes are the communication and contact with course content and faculty is generally through the course, and currently in Blackboard. This summer we will be changing to a new platform, but there is communication outside the course, but for the content of the course, it's all inside of Blackboard. And then synchronous, and so you don't have to meet anytime, you just work through the content weekly. And then the synchronous has a scheduled time for meeting, and some of those would be group counseling, practicum, and internship, as well as a few others. But those courses meet weekly, and those are on Wednesday nights. And so when you sign up for those classes, you will have an idea of what that time slot is every Wednesday evening. And then the semi-synchronous are classes that don't meet weekly, but meet periodically throughout the semester. And that depends on the format of the class. The skills class meet not weekly, but Dr. Pierce, about every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, we're meeting approximately 3/4 of the week out of the semester. There's some weeks where students have pairs practice, and so, or they meet with me. And so on those weeks, we don't meet as a full class.
Right. And then the consultation and counselors as agents of change meet about 5 times throughout the semester. Again, that information is shared with you as you sign on to the class. So it's kind of a broad format. And again, the idea is that you meet in wherever you're located, rather than having to come to campus. There is no residential component with this class, with this program. And then it's kind of important, since it's an online program, to consider what the day-to-day process is. Many programs online have different formats. Ours is set up in a weekly format. So when you log into the course, it'll say week 1. here's the things you need to read, assignments, and anything that may be due. And so it's kind of paced out through the whole semester and gives you a chance to kind of absorb the content that you're learning about. The courses are content-based, so these are the areas of content that our nationally accrediting board and our state boards say are required for licensure or certification. And so we focus primarily on those areas. There's a few extra courses in there that aren't targeted to those areas, but are supporting in that work. And so then the skills class, you have a skills course in every semester of the program. And that allows you the opportunity to sort of begin practicing those basic skills and extending them, getting comfortable with them as you kind of matriculate through the program. And then at the end, of course, near the last 3 or 4 semesters, you get into practicum and internship, and those are your clinical courses. Those are 3 semesters, practicum, internship 1 and internship 2, where you're actually in contact with clients and you are collecting clinical hours at a particular site, depending on which program you're in. And for those classes, again, you meet weekly in a group setting, as well as with your site supervisor at your clinical site. Before I leave this, well, I was going to just ask, can I ask if there's any questions? Because some of that kind of might be confusing to the students. Any questions on those? No? Okay. And then we are set in a cohort model. Again, within the cohort model, we do have part-time and full-time. So depending on which of those 2 options you select would determine how long it takes to complete the program. But once you begin in your cohort, you would stay with that group of students through the whole program, which provides you some opportunities to create support with other students, and which is always important for us. So the first semester that you begin, if you are a full-time student, I have it here, you will take 3 classes, and those would be professional orientation and ethics, your counseling skills, and then your theories and techniques and counseling. And then if you are a part-time student, you would take 2 of those same courses. You would take the professional orientation and ethics and the counseling skills. And so those are already set in place for you once you have decided which of the 2 tracks, like areas of specialty, school or mental health, and full-time or part-time, then those are set into place. And we each semester, your advisor will kind of touch bases with you, but since it is a cohort, that is already, there's not a lot of guessing unless something comes up, right? And then when do I specialize? So because a lot of the courses are shared between the mental health and the school counseling, sometimes our students will begin thinking, oh, I'm going to be a school counselor, and then decide to be a mental health or school. So there is some time at the beginning of the program, about 2 or 3 semesters in, would that be right, Dr. Witt? About 3 semesters in, before you really have to make a commitment. There are a few courses that do vary as dictated by the licensing board or the certification requirements that are very specific to your area of specialty, but they still blend in well for areas of specialty across the board because they're all in counseling. It's just areas of specialty. So you do have a little bit of time. And again, as I previously mentioned, if you decide to go in one track or another, you may have to, if you decide to be a school counselor, but you've never been a teacher, you may have to take 1 or 2 courses extra. And so that might be a little bit of a conversation, as well as if you decide to do both, then we would talk about which one do you want to complete first, and then how to tag on the rest of those so that you can graduate with both degrees completed at the same time. Did I miss anything? Good.
Apologize, my wireless keeps cutting out. So why come to Truman? Well, Dr. Leggett just mentioned a little bit of this. We do have our fully online cohorts. And one of the things that works well in terms of the cohort model, research has shown that students who are in cohort models tend to graduate more frequently. They tend to be more successful overall. They tend to have more long-term relationships, which is particularly important in an online program. Being in different places around the country, it can sometimes feel easy to feel isolated, that I'm sort of in this by myself. And so part of what we've done to help address that is to set things up into a cohort model. Another way that we're working to increase contact throughout is we have a very young student organization that we've been working to build. And so we're slowly growing that, and have some other opportunities as well to interact with classmates and to get to know one another, and again, feel like part of a community. Another thing about coming specifically to our program is that we do have a strong focus on professional practice. As others have mentioned, we have skills classes every semester for full-time students and every other semester for part-time students. And so we constantly want to help you improve in this craft that is professional counseling, and moving forward in that and continuing to grow. The next slide. There we go. Why else Truman? Here at Truman, we have knowledgeable, experienced professors. And other places can say that too, but we do happen to have some very established educators. Many of us have been working in the field of either as professional counselors or as counselor educators on the order of decades, and so that experience accrues over time. And as others have mentioned, we're not just professors in the classroom, but we're actually out in the field doing the work as well. I at the moment am the exception to that rule. I'm actually not seeing clients who are doing active supervision outside of the program, but the other three of us are. And so what the stories that we bring to class, the things that we contribute to conversation are based in the actual work that we do from day to day. And then finally, here you have some of the leaders in the counseling profession nationwide. Dr. Leggett is currently the president of the Texas Counseling Association. So she is the voice and presence for over 45,000 counselors in the state of Texas. Dr. Caruth is a government, among other things, is a consultant to the Washington state government, both in terms of the legislative and executive branches for their crisis response teams. Dr. Pierce is a co-author of a recent chapter looking at the integration of rehabilitation counseling with other specializations within the field. And then there's me. And so, again, we bring a lot of leadership and expertise with us into our particular field and into the classroom. Dr. Cruz, I think this is you.
All right, my turn. I think one thing that I would like to add before I get started on KCREP, if I may, is you've heard a lot about specialization and the different tracks and those sorts of things. And one thing that I find to be helpful for myself with regard to who I am as a professional is thinking about a counselor first identity. And I think for me, what that means is that whether I'm working in the school system as a professional school counselor or in the community as a licensed professional counselor or as a rehabilitation counselor, we all share a set of values. And I think that for me, compared to say some of the sister professions, social work, marriage and family therapy, psychology, I think that those shared values are really what brought me to this specific discipline and what aligns most closely with who I see myself as a human being on the planet. And so counselor first, specialty second is what I like to say. We're all in this together, and we're all going to be developing a shared set of skills and dispositions, and then we disperse, right? Then we go and we use our own values and our own expertise and skills in different settings and with different clients. And you've heard a lot of us are doing pretty different things, and we're doing the same thing, right? So we're working in different areas, we're working with different people, but what we're doing is working towards, as Dr. Pierce mentioned, wellness and a holistic frame for how we approach the work and how we view clients. So anyway, it was just on my mind as something that I think has always been helpful for me whenever I'm thinking about, oh, what does all this mean? So anyway, okay. Now, KCREP, you may have heard of KCREP. I remember when I was in my master's program a million years ago, that one of our test questions was we had to memorize the acronym. And so it's been ground into my head for a long time. So KCREP is the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs. And so this is a national body that oversees and has established a set of practice or professional standards that really inform, and the purpose of KCREP really is to provide a level of protection for clients, provide a level of protection for our communities, because if I am a graduate of a KCREP program, then the public can see that, okay, this person has met XYZ standards, this person has this knowledge base. And so KCREP in general is an accrediting body specific to the counseling profession. Again, lots of different specialties within that. So school, mental health, rehab, et cetera. But counselor first. So within the counseling profession, that really has probably been around, what, 40 years or so now, and has established a set of standards that are well regarded and have become across the nation sort of the standard of practice for many of the states. One thing to know about counseling, specifically mental health counseling as a discipline, is that counseling is not necessarily nationally governed. So each state, like the state of Washington, the Department of Health in the state of Washington oversees who they let become a licensed mental health counselor. And so one of the things that's important for our students at Truman is to recognize that because Truman is in the process, we're not quite done yet, but we're in the process of becoming a KCREP accredited program, that's going to have some weight, even if you're in Washington or in Atlanta, Georgia, or in Houston, Texas. But KCREP is a known commodity. And so it's important whether or not Truman becomes your landing place. I would strongly recommend that you really do your homework about KCREP accreditation, and also within the state that you reside, making sure that you understand what the requirements are for professional practice in those states. I know a lot of the states, Washington included, will use KCREP as sort of the standard measure for what they expect new professionals to be able to come into the field with. So KCREP is the accrediting body. Accreditation in general, as you may or may not know, is it's a process and a way of demonstrating, like I said earlier, a way of demonstrating to the public that we meet XYZ. We've met these standards. What we're doing has been normed, so to speak, across lots of different states, across lots of different specialties. And so that provides a level of assurance to consumers that what I bring as a counselor is a specific set of skills. And so that's one of the reasons that I chose to come to Truman, and one of the reasons that I think we're special in that we have such a strong focus on our clinical skills training. And I think that really, regardless of location, regardless of specialty, having a really strong foundation in that skills is a big part of the work. And so I think that KCREP serves to provide the structure around that and provide assurance to the public that the client or the counselor that they're going to see and paying lots of money to go see knows what they're doing. So questions about any of that? KCREP? Okay.
You know,
Okay,
Dr.
please.
Caruth,
Yeah, please.
this is Dr. Lee. If I could just add too, that some federal the counseling positions require that you graduate from a
True,
K-12
true.
accredited program.
Yeah.
People who work with the VA or any
Mhm.
federal position, because the national standard of education is that K-12 standard.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Leggett. I think here in Washington, particularly on the sort of the Seattle and what they call out here the I-5 corridor, but that would be like Western Washington, lots of military bases, which means lots of individuals have TRICARE as their insurance. And in order to be a mental health counselor for the TRICARE panel, you need to have a degree from a KCREP accredited university program. So that does, and it carries a lot of weight in different areas with different groups. So thank you, Dr. Leggett. Any other KCREP questions? I'd point you to the website too. There's lots of really good information, and if you just Google KCREP, it'll pop up for you. If you've want to look specifically like at your state or states that you intend to consider for residing in the future. Different states, as I mentioned earlier, different states are going to have some variation in what they require for licensure. For example, I've worked with students here in Washington that have like family ties to Florida, for example. And in Florida, in order to become licensed as a professional counselor, there's different requirements than what Washington says. So Florida professional counselors have to have a class in human sexuality, for example, whereas in Washington state, that's not necessarily required for licensure. And so it's important for you, regardless of where you are now, to be aware of what your state requires. And the same, I'm not a school counselor. I don't have the expertise that my colleagues do in school counseling, but that's also true for school counseling, is to know state by state, because each state, their superintendent's office most likely, or the Board of Education most likely, is going to be the governing body that oversees requirements for entry into a profession. So just so you know, it's not a national given that what you learn is going to translate to every single possible place in the country. KCREP helps. KCREP has really closed that gap in a lot of ways. And so I think we're moving, and counseling, and I know I'm rambling now, but I have the floor, so forgive me. Counseling is a relatively young profession compared to our sister professions. And so part of what we're experiencing now in 2023 is the efforts to standardize, the efforts to quote unquote legitimize, not that we're not legitimate, but the efforts to more strongly align nationally, as you might see like with psychologists or with social workers, different disciplines that have been around a lot longer. And so we're in that sort of movement towards a really standardized, nationally standardized profession. So just so you know, that's one of the reasons, or probably a pretty big reason, that KCREP is really important. Okay, so career outcomes. First of all, what I would like to say is please do not come into this work because you're looking to get rich. None of us are. Most of us come with our hearts first. However, thankfully, we are able to earn a living. You can see here a national, some national stats with regard to career outcomes for both clinical mental health counseling and school counseling. So mental health counseling, primarily in the different states, you'll see the professional credential of a licensed professional counselor. However, that's not true across the board here in Washington state. My credential is LMHC. So I'm a licensed mental health counselor, which is identical. It's just that the state has chosen this title versus that title. So licensed professional counselors for the mental health track, mental health specialty. Whereas in school counseling, you'll see a licensed or certified school counselor. Again, different states have different sort of naming conventions around that. Both specialty tracks have a positive growth rate. I think that the last 3 or 4 years with the COVID pandemic, and also just an increased awareness of mental health, has sort of shown a light on how much need there is in our different communities. And I think because of this, in my experience, and I've been in the field Dr. Witt mentioned our decades of work earlier, and so I'm proud to say that I've been in the helping fields for 25 years now. And I think that what I've noticed across my time in the field is that stigma related to mental health is on a downward trend, meaning that it's becoming more and more acceptable to talk about mental health. It's becoming more and more acceptable to seek out treatment. And as a result of that, I think that there's been a shift with regard to the perceived need. Not that we're thicker now than we have been before, but we are more positioned to talk about those things, and we have more sort of community/cultural support around help seeking. And so you're seeing growth trends in both disciplines, school and mental health, primarily for those reasons, but also just the fact that these are fairly stable career choices with regard to we're not necessarily going to work our way out of the need for mental health care or the need for school counselors. A lot of careers you might, hear about careers becoming more automated and, maybe less human interaction is needed. That's not the case for us. And so mental health here, this stat, 22% growth rate, and school 10% growth rate. So both faster than average. And this is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, I'm assuming. Is that where that came from?
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you can also see here median incomes, and I would assume that this is a national average for both disciplines here. Mental health counselors, 48,500, school counselors, 60,510. There's going to be variation dependent upon your state, also dependent upon length of time in the field, what your credentials are, those sorts of things. But that gives you a snapshot. And if I can step up on my soapbox for just a minute, what I would say about that is that I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied that my students complete, on average, 6 years of higher education. And here in Washington State, when I do a analysis of the labor market in Washington State, my students, as they come out of their training programs after 6 years of education, are making a salary that is pretty much identical to the salaries of other professionals that have much less training. For example, in Washington State, a certified nursing assistant. And I am not disparaging my colleagues that do that work, because it is by far some of the hardest work that a person can do. All I'm saying is that there's a disparity in training required for a CNA, which could be 1 or 2 years of higher education, versus training required in my discipline for a mental health counselor, which is typically 6 years of education, and they're coming out making the same salary. That's not okay for me. And so you heard Dr. Witt say earlier that I'm involved sort of in some political efforts here in the state of Washington. That's one of the things, that's one of my soapboxes, pay equity. I believe that we aren't getting paid what we need to be paid. And so as a mental health counselor, as a counselor educator, I believe part of my role is to use my voice and use the quote unquote power that I have from my position and from my unearned and earned privilege to address some of those disparities. And so don't come into the work because you're looking to get rich, but the benefits of the work far outweigh the pocket money, far outweigh what you bring home financially. I would do it a million times over. I would do this same, I would follow my same path a million times over because every day, I get to do work that brings me joy, whether that's in the classroom with my students or in the field with my clients. I get to do things that matter. I get to help people. I think it was Monique earlier talk about really wanting to find a way to really help. So I'm glad you're here for that reason, Monique. All of you actually, but I think that yes, money is important. We all have to live. We all have to pay our bills, and the non-financial benefits of this work, like I said, I'd do it a million times over. And I have not been, I mean, I could tell, I'll be quiet. I know we're on a timeline here, but what I'm saying is don't let that dissuade you. If you want to do this work, if your heart is in this work, it will be rewarding in its own way. Okay. Next slide. Affordability. So yay, Truman. What I can say here in Washington State, and I've worked for a few different counselor education programs, Truman's program is very affordable compared to the national average. The last program that I left, you could double that. And the thing is that you're still getting the same K-CREP accredited education. So what I would say is that for the pocketbook and for the return on investment, Truman is a really good choice. Also, what you should know is that, like Dr. Witt mentioned earlier, we have collectively decades of experience. We have collectively decades of experience teaching and training counselors, decades of experience working as counselors. And so you're really getting bang for your buck, not just to toot my own horn, but I think that we bring value, especially when you look at the cost, the affordability of this program compared to other programs. And like we were talking about on the last slide, you're going to get your return on investment will come more quickly. And I think I may defer, Dr. Witt, to you about minimal fees. But what I would say about the same price, no matter where you live, for example, here in Washington State, in Seattle specifically, the cost of living is very different than it is in Kirksville, Missouri. And so my colleagues here in Washington State are just as welcome to come to the Truman program as folks that live in the Kirksville community or across the nation. We've got students in our newest cohort that are from the East Coast. We've got some folks from New York, New Jersey area. And then we also are spread out. And so I think that provides a breadth of exposure and relevance to different areas in the country. So I'll be the West Coast person, right? I'll bring in some of the things that are relevant and important for practitioners on the West Coast. And we've got Dr. Leggett and Dr. Witt that are sort of centrally located in the country. And then Dr. Pierce is, we'll call you the East Coast rep, Dr. Pierce. And so I think we provide a good context. We've got, we're coming to this place with a lot of experience. We're coming here because we want to be here, right? That this is a program at a point in time in our collective development, both as a profession and as just a global community. I think that the move towards digital virtual education is really important. So can you help me out a little bit with minimal fees, Dr. Witt?
Sure, I can speak about that for a moment. So our program is, we used to advertise as no fees whatsoever, because we don't have a lot of the fees that come with programs, a library fee or a workout fee or any of those different types of fees. We're changing the language a little bit to say minimal fees, because one of the things that students do need is a HIPAA compliant Zoom account, particularly for practicing an internship. And one of the things, we're trying to be very cost effective with that. And so the most cost effective way that we found is to charge the students a fee to do that, rather than having them go out and buy it individually. So that type of thing, that's why we have that minimal fees language there. It's an ongoing conversation in terms of what that looks like and exactly how much that minimal fee is. But it is something that we want to be transparent about for your needs as you go through the program.
Thank you. All right.
And so at this point, if you have additional questions beyond what we'll talk about in just a minute, we'll let you get to Abby and ask some questions and ask us some questions as you see fit. But here's my contact information in general. It's carlwitt@truman.edu or 660-785-5400. And with that, I will switch us out of the PowerPoint. Thank you. And move back into our regular screen. There we go. So let me stop sharing. What questions do you have? What are you wondering about? Abby, would you like to talk a little bit about sort of your experience and what it's been like as a student here in the program?
I can talk a little bit about it. I work full time, 40 hours or more a week. And so I definitely was looking for an online program that didn't have like, constant synchronous stuff that was happening during the day. I accidentally ended up in one of those classes a while back, and I was like, not from this program, and a different thing that I tried. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't just stop in the middle of my day constantly and like be in classes. So this definitely helps with like that, being able to have those dual roles. I am a full-time student, and I am able to kind of balance that. I don't have like kids or anything that needs my attention at night. I could just go home and be a student on the nights and weekends, and then come here and have been able to kind of like balance that. It's been a balance of work, and I do have terrible time management skills, but it's definitely been manageable. I will say that if that's like a concern that you have, I mean, I have found it manageable, and I know that others in our program work part-time. A couple, I think, work full-time. So there are ways to kind of manage that. And also, I will say the emphasis on the skills class has been one of my favorite things about the program, the fact that we do have those regular classes throughout where we can practice. And those are the classes where we have that time with faculty and, each other. For the first couple, we use each other as like our practices. So we kind of get to know each other through that, and group, we're all sort of in a counseling group together. And so then getting to know your classmates that way while simultaneously practicing your skills has been my favorite part. And like I said, I have been able to maintain relationships with my cohort. So we kind of, have a group chat, help each other out, ask questions, support each other in that way. So that is a model, and I appreciate that.
Valerie, what are you wondering about?
I actually have a question for Abby. So what like classes appeal to you the most in the program?
Abby, if I can step in for just a moment here, any class with Dr. Witt is my favorite class. I think it's what she. Go ahead.
Yeah, the skills classes have especially been my favorite. I think group was my personal favorite as far as the ones I've taken so far. I really enjoyed that. It was a summer class, so it was more condensed. The other semesters are 16 weeks and summer is 10. So you really like pack a punch. So that's when I took my group class. But overall, that was just a very positive experience, getting to kind of have that practice and do that. I'm trying to think of like non-practical classes that I've enjoyed. It's all every new class, I'm like, okay, I've got to push a new class into my brain. And so that is been difficult. What's the one? Oh, I just genuinely can't remember. It's just fully out of my brain. Okay. There have definitely been, I can think of, I think more in like assignments and like things learned. And there were a lot of assignments in like the career class that I took with Dr. Pierce that I really enjoyed getting to do, and the practice I got to do. And then development is one of my harder classes, but there were a lot of different assignments and things we got to learn about and do in that course that I enjoyed as well. And similar to, you probably had to take your psych major at Truman, right? So it was very similar to the developmental psych class that I took at Truman when I was a psych undergrad at Truman. So, but obviously with a more counseling focus, but kind of pairing those two knowledge bases.
For me, I think a question that I have is, with it being only 3 classes a semester, is it a 2-year program or is it a 3-year program?
Yes, is the answer to that. So going full-time, 3 classes a semester for 60 hours is 7 terms, and we're year-round, so we go fall, spring, summer. So it takes 7 semesters, or just over 2 calendar years on the full-time model. In the part-time model, it takes 10 terms, so just over 3 calendar years to finish up that way.
And then how many hours of practicum is included in those last, what was it, 3 semesters or last 4 semesters?
So, Dr. Elliott, do you want to take that one?
It's 100 for the practicum, with 40 of those being direct contact with clients and 60 can be indirect or direct. And then each internship is 300 with 120 direct hours in each. So 240 total direct hours across the 2 internships and 600 total hours across the 2 internships.
Thank you.
I'll just add that that's KCREP's standard is the 100, 600. So practicum 140 direct. Thank you, Abby. And then internship total of 600, 240 direct. So you'll see the same at any KCREP program that you're looking at.
And as you look across state licensing law, many state licensing laws have come to reflect those standards as well. And so that's it's a double force in terms of those particular requirements.
What about or can you share a little bit about the admissions process?
Sure, I'll take that one. Or Ms. Townsend, would you rather take it? We can go either way.
Doesn't matter to me, either is fine.
You start us and I'll supplement as needed.
Okay, so you can go to apply.truman.edu. There is a $40 application fee. Truman undergrad students don't have to pay that, but anyone who hasn't been a Truman graduate has to pay that $40 fee. With that, we require 3 professional references. So that can be someone you've worked with before, that supervised you, or just a coworker, personal reference. We really don't restrict those, but would probably prefer the professional. And then we require a background check, and it's through FSCR. I always switch those letters? FCSR.
FCSR.
I always switch those letters. But the link is in the application and I can send it out as well. It's just a general background check. And I believe there's a fee to that as well. I think it's like $15.
14 or 15 now.
14
Yes.
or 15. But that's just a general background check. What am I missing? The transcripts, yes, from official, all official. It has to be sent to us officially, from all the institutions that you've attended. Even if you did like dual credit back in the day through high school, we need that transcript as well. And you can just request those from your institutions and get those sent directly to Truman State University. What else? After your application is complete, there is an interview component. Dr. Witt will reach out once we have your complete application, and he will schedule that interview through Zoom. What am I missing about the application too? I deal with 11 different programs and all their applications are different. So sometimes I get them mixed up in my head.
I think the only thing I haven't heard mentioned was a personal statement. We do ask for a 1 to 2 page personal statement. I'm just talking a little bit about your interest in counseling and why you'd like to join us.
Yeah. I will say I applied to several graduate programs. I kind of took a twisty-turny road to get here. This was the least awful application process of any of the counseling graduate programs I applied to. They had like the least stringent requirements. Like a lot of them were like, you have to get a letter from a professor, doesn't matter how long you've been out of school, or like different things like that. This one was like the least stressful. The interview is the least stressful. Dr. Witt is not terrible to interview with. Some of the other places were. It was not an awful process, if that helps.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I try to make the application easy. Even for your reference letters, you don't have to like go out and ask them and then submit that. You just include their email on there. Super simple. We send them a direct link to the form. They fill out the form in like 5 to 10 minutes. Doesn't take long. And then they submit that and then it comes back to us right away. So super simple that way as well.
And GRE?
So GRE is required if the overall undergraduate GPA is below a 3.0. If my undergraduate GPA is a 3.0 or better, again, across all undergraduate work, then we waive the GRE. There's no requirement there.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like? Like to know what we're wondering about.
One
Yeah,
piece of
please.
advice I'll specifically give you, Mallory, if you're considering this program, if you're sitting school counseling at all, just go ahead and take psych at the exceptional child if you haven't already. Being a psych major, child studies minor, it'll check off your boxes and then you'll have it ready to go if you decide to go into school counseling, not having a cert. And so I was so glad I did. I almost didn't. And then like last semester, I was like, I might as well throw it on there. It'll check a box. And then it's been so helpful. So I can recommend.
Yeah, and to Mallory and any other undergraduates who are listening or undergraduates in progress, if you have some space in your schedule, there are a couple other certification-oriented classes that you can pick up and go ahead and knock that whole thing out before even applying for the program, if you'd like. For folks who have already graduated or need a refresher or just took a different combination of classes, we do have those classes available, and so you can take them. But it's just one less thing to have to worry about. Anyone else have any other pearls of wisdom to share? Abby, you're in the center of my Hollywood squares, so I'm looking right at you. Any other question? Oh,
I
go
will
ahead.
add, if you have any problems with the application or just any additional questions about the application side of things, you can always email me. I know I've been emailing both of you so far, so all those links and things come from me. So feel free to email me or call me. So it's dtownsend@truman.edu.
All right. Well, I'm got 2 o'clock Central Time here, so I think that's all the time we've been allotted. Thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon again. I hope you got something worthwhile out of it. And again, please reach out with any questions or concerns, and we'll be happy to answer those as best we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You'll have a wonderful afternoon and a great weekend.